Hi, I'm Scott McLean from Trance Music Mastery. In this video, I will show you how Adam Sabo created a bass sound like the one heard in Sundown with Irena Love Original Mix by ReOrder. The sound that we will make sounds like this. Let me go ahead and just play that MIDI clip for you and walk you through the notes. So it's D sharp octave 2 up to D sharp octave 3, and it's just spanning that octave and playing a rolling bass line pattern. So I'll play through it one time with the MIDI notes. Okay, and let's get started. So let me bring up the sound map for this sound. And this patch uses two oscillators. Oscillator 1 is a saw wave, and oscillator 2 is a pulse wave. Both of those are mixed together and flow into a filter, and in this case the filter is the low pass old drive filter type in Zebra. And then that is modulated, the filter cutoff is modulated by envelope 2 with a zero attack, medium decay, sustain is at 0, and fast release. And then that flows into the amplifier, and the volume is modulated by envelope 1 with zero attack, medium decay, sustain at 80% of full volume, and a fast release. And then that flows through an EQ with a low shelf filter boosting 5.5 dB near 70 Hz, a bandpass filter boosting plus 1.5 dB near 175 Hz, and a bandpass filter cutting 1.5 dB near 600 Hz. And then that flows through a delay. It's a stereo delay. The left delay is synchronized to 1/4 notes, and the right delay is synchronized to 1/8 dotted notes. And then that goes to the main output. And Adam Sabo says, classic trance rolling bass. The best way to achieve this is layering a saw with a 1 octave lower square or pulse wave. This gives a big and full sound, perfect for bass. Low pass filter with short decay and delay are essential for this rolling bass. Alright, let's program this patch. And I'm starting from the initialize patch, so let me go ahead and play that. Okay, now there was a change between versions. There's a 2.3 and a 2.5. I'm using 2.5, but there's a 2.3 mode, and it just turns out that Sundown is actually based on the 2.3 mode. So to maintain the compatibility with that, we need to select that if you're following along with Zebra 2.5. If you're using 2.3, then you should be able to just follow along as I have it set, as you see me set it up in the video. So now you can kind of see that very faint 2.3 being displayed here up in the display window here. Alright, so next, the first thing that we're going to do is increase the volume to 100 on lane 1. And so I'll go ahead and play that now. Alright, and for the global, we're going to leave everything the way it is now with the default values. And next, let's look at oscillator 1. So for oscillator 1, we do want to enable the phase reset on note start, and we're going to enable some oscillator effects, and one of them is brilliance. And so what I want to do with that is I want to have both the signal analyzer and the oscilloscope displayed while I play this and change the brilliance setting so you can see what kind of effect it's having both in the spectrum analyzer as well as in the waveform itself. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now and make the change to brilliance, and I'll be bringing this all the way up to 100. And let me do that again and freeze these. So with the brilliance fully maxed out, we see this very sharp pointed waveform in the oscilloscope, and we do hear it get brighter, and then if we zoom in, we should be able to see differences between the high-end harmonics when brilliance is at 0 versus brilliance at 100. So let's go ahead and look at that real quick. I'm going to zoom in here, come up to the high end, and unfreeze these displays. I'll just return this to 0 and then bring this up to 100. Yeah, so you could see a difference in how the harmonics appear in the spectrum analyzer as I brought that brilliance up to 100. And the next thing we want to do with oscillator 1 is bring its volume up to 200. Okay. Next, let's bring in oscillator 2, and I'm going to bring the Zebra 2 up here so we can see the waveform display. For oscillator 2, we want to make it a square wave, or in fact a pulse wave. And the basic shape that we're going to arrive at is something like this. And I'll go through this and try to set it so that you can hear the changes as I make the waveform changes. But what I wanted to do is just show you what the final result's going to be like. And in fact, in order to get this patch exactly right, what I'm going to do is at the end I'll load the wave that Adam actually programmed in here. But it's very similar to this. But even the smallest difference can affect the overall tonality of the sound. Alright, so what I'll do is basically just back to where it was, close to where it was. And so we'll start with this basic setup with a saw wave, and then I'll make the changes. And for this, what I think I'll do, see if I can arrange these windows so that we can get everything on the display. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and play the sequence and make the waveform adjustment. In fact, for this I think it'd be helpful to solo oscillator 2, so let me deactivate oscillator 1. Very similar to this shape, what we're going to end up with. So let me freeze this. In fact, for this, what I won't do, I'm not going to play the sequence. I'm just going to hold a note down. Okay, and what we're going to do now is actually add some effects to this waveform, and we're going to add brilliance. And so I'll go ahead and just hold a note down and make the brilliance change, and that's going to be going up to 60.0. Okay, and you can see the peaks there and the waveform being added by that brilliance as it adds more higher end harmonics. And the next effect that we're going to add is a fundamental, and what this will do is add a sine wave to the waveform at the fundamental pitch, and then we will set the volume level with the control here, and I'm going to bring that up to 40.0. Let me unfreeze this. In fact, you can already see that having that fundamental there being already added in with the sine wave changes this waveform shape overall. So if it's none, I'll just change it. I'll hold the note down and then I'll change it from none to fundamental, and you'll be able to see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to increase this to 40.0. And you can see the fundamental here, this harmonic that's present in the spectrum analyzer. Now, that's pretty close to the waveform that Adam has set for this, but it's not exactly right. Even just a small difference here can make a change to the overall tonality. So, in fact, just to demonstrate that, I'll just move this around just a little bit and you'll see what kind of difference that can make. So you could hear in one position right here, it had a much brighter sound. We saw higher harmonics being present, versus if I have it over here, or a little bit more to the left, it has a duller sound. Okay, so let me go ahead and load up the wave that Adam had programmed. Like I said, it's very close, but mine was very close to this, but not exact, and it's enough to throw the sound off. So. Alright, so now we're using the one that Adam had set originally. And let's bring oscillator 1 back in. And let's bring oscillator 2 volume. When I saved that waveform, I did not have the effects in place, so let me bring those back in. So we had brilliance set for 60. I'll just redo it. And volume level at 90. And tuning, we're going to bring that down 1 octave. So setting tune to -12 semitones. Okay, next let's set up the ENV1, envelope 1 ADSR settings. So attack, we're going to leave that at 0. Decay, bring that down to 42.5. In fact, I'll go ahead and play the sequence now. And bring the sustain, leave that at 80. And then the release, we're going to want a faster release, so we'll bring that down to 10. And then velocity, we'll leave that where it is. Okay, the next step is to filter out some of that upper end, the high-end harmonics, and make this sound more like a bass. So let's go ahead and add that filter, VCF1. We are going to modulate the filter using ENV2. And we want to set that to, actually the way I'll do this is I'll bring the cutoff down. And I'm going to bring that down to 14. And we're going to use ENV2 to modulate the cutoff frequency. So I'm going to bring up the ENV2 amount to 106. And now let's go ahead and configure the envelope 2 settings. Oh, before I do that, we want to set the filter type to LP old drive. And we want key followed, we want to set that to 5. Okay, now we can configure ENV2. So we want to bring the decay down to 38. This will end up with a faster decay. And before I change the decay, I'm going to change the sustain and set that to 0. When we're modulating the filter cutoff, sustain is actually an offset that's applied to the cutoff frequency that's set on the filter itself. And so when sustain is 0, then in effect, whatever the cutoff frequency is here is what the note will sustain at in terms of cutoff. So now let's bring decay down to 38. And fact, I'll bring it all the way down to 0 and then bring it back up to 38 now, so you can hear how lower values sound. And with release, we're going to lower that to 10. So what I'll do is bring it all the way down to 0 and then back up to 10. Doesn't seem to have too much of an effect on the sound of the note release, and it's not as apparent because we have a very short release here on the volume envelope. So very rapidly the note volume goes to 0 as soon as the note stops. So we're not able to really hear too much of how that release is affecting it. So for the most part, it's pretty much safely ignore that release setting. But just to be sure, let's try a higher release value and see if that has any effect. So yeah, it doesn't really have any effect because of that very low fast release envelope on the volume. Okay, LFO1, we are not using that in this patch. As I said in an earlier video, it is automatically hardwired to the vibrato control for all the oscillators actually. Okay, next what we want to do is add an EQ. So let me bring up EQ1. And for this, we want to put a low shelf boost 5.5 dB between 55 and 100 Hertz. And then using filter 2, we're going to put a plus 1.5 dB boost just right around 175 Hertz. And for node 3, we're going to put a minus 1.5 dB cut just above 550 Hertz, right about here. So let me go ahead and bring that in place. So now I'll do a before and after with and without EQ. So you can hear how it accentuates that low end. And then finally, filter 4. The patch that Atom program has filter 4 all the way to the right, but the gain is at 0, so it's really not affecting anything. Okay, let's go now to adding a delay. And this is a stereo delay. We're going to set sync 1 timing, leave that at 1/4 note. And sync 2, we're going to set that to 1/8 dotted. And bring the cross back to 0, and then bring up the mix. Set that to 12.5. And then bring the feedback up to 17.5. And then the last thing to do is increase the overall output level to 66.0. So I'll bring it all the way down and then I'll bring it up to 66. And that completes the patch. I'll see you in the next video.